Greetings, friends. Today we're doing things a little different. My stalwart editor, Italo, has suggested we change things up a little to get more people interested in the YouTube channel. And quite frankly, I don't know anything about these things, so we're going to listen to him. It's not going to hurt anything, I can tell you that. So, today we are actually going to be answering some questions from Beast Foundry employees that they are very unfamiliar with both TTRPGs and Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So, it's easy for me to forget that there are a ton of people that don't know anything about this. I've been doing it most of my life, so it's very second nature to me. So, without any further ado, Italo, roll the intro, and then we're going to get into it. So, one of the questions asked was, how do you get into this? So, the easiest thing is for rule information, you're going to need a Pathfinder 2nd Edition core rulebook. Now, you don't have to have that. You can use a website called Archives of Nethys, and we'll throw a little link at the bottom of the page so that you guys can check it out if you want. Everything you need is available off of that website. That said, it's not always the simplest thing to use, because while you can easily find the information, if you want to do classes, it'll list all the classes for you, and then you can dive into them. But sometimes it's hard to parse through all of that information, and it can seem a little overwhelming in that format. So I do always highly recommend the books, but I understand that sometimes that's just not very feasible. I will say Paizo, the company that makes Pathfinder 2nd Edition, they are pretty customer friendly. You can get a hardcover book, you can get a softcover book, you can get a PDF of the book, and each of these have their own price range. So there are a lot of rather affordable options that are available to you to pick up the books. But as I said, you can also do it completely free. So the core rulebook is going to have what are called ancestries. This is your race, the human, elf, dwarf, goblin, so on and so forth. Then it's going to have your classes, fighter, wizard, cleric, rogue. There are a lot in there. Then it's going to basically start giving you the rules of how to play. There are additional things that your characters get and your classes get. Skills and feats. Maybe you don't know what those are, but they are all explained in there. And then there's equipment, and then there's a chapter on spells, and then it basically gets into the rules and how to run the game. And then there's a big treasure list for cool stuff for your characters to find and keep going on even grander adventures as they get more powerful. The most important thing you need to do is, if you want to get into it, you have to find players. Now, in the age of the internet, back when I did this, there was no internet when I got started. So you had to find a group of friends and you all got together and played at a table. Hence why it's referred to as tabletop role-playing games, or TTRPG. The term RPG, just role-playing game, often can be taken more towards the video game side of things. There's your Final Fantasies, Diablo, even Minecraft falls into this realm quite a bit. So there's a lot of concepts here that you're probably already going to be very familiar with, which is a bit advantageous, because when I got into this, there were very few of those things to really help guide your mind. It's like, oh, this is just like this or just like that. I mean, dear Lord, World of Warcraft. I mean, that's D&D, Pathfinder, all World of Warcraft, all of those things are very, very similar in the basic functionality of them. To gather a group, how many people do you need? How many is too many? How many is not enough? I would say, so the book recommends that you have a total of 5 people. That is 1 person to run the game, called the Game Master, and 4 players. Now, you can do this pretty easily by having just 3 players. You can also do it with 5 players, but I would recommend you get a little bit of experience under your belt before you jump into 5 players. You can go higher than 5. It requires a very disciplined group and everyone to know what they're doing. Otherwise, it takes so much time for everyone to be able to do what they want. It actually becomes a little boring and not fun, unless you have a very regimented group that knows exactly what they're doing. If you go less than 3, the problem you can find is it's difficult to plan fights because a couple of bad die rolls and the characters will die. And nobody really wants that to happen that easily. So that's why the sweet spot is between 3 and 4 players and then 1 game master. So basically 4 to 5 people. You can, of course, do this in person. It is a blast. I love that. And all you're really going to need to do that is some paper. And any more in this technical age, you can download dice rolling apps because dice are important. You can do almost everything online. You're just going to need to write down a few things. There are websites. There's one, Path Builder. We'll put a link down below, and you can use Path Builder on you. There's an app for it. You can use a web page. You can completely build your character. You can even make all of your dice rolls from that app. So really, you can get into this for almost nothing if you are really truly interested in it. Your characters, the players, they basically, like we mentioned, they're going to pick their ancestry, their class, and they're going to make their character. Now, the type of character you can make is basically limited by your imagination. There are, in the core rulebook, there are several classes, and even since Pathfinder 2nd edition was released, there have been almost double that amount of classes have been released. So you would be very hard pressed to think of some fantasy concept and not be able to make a character around it. And you can go onto the Pathfinder 2e subreddit, and there are people that constantly are theory crafting, and you can ask, hey, I want to make a character that's like Batman. What would you recommend? I want to make a character that is, pick anyone, a superhero, a mutant from Marvel, anything, Aragorn from Lord of the Rings. All of these things, they are very easy to do. Aragorn's actually a bad example because as you straight out, he's a ranger, and there's a ranger class because of him. So very easy to accommodate. The player side, that's the easy side. The game master side, it's not actually that much more difficult. It's very different, though, from what the players are going to do. On the Game Master side, it's your job to create the adventure and narrate the story for your players. Now, the players are going to tell you what they do. You basically respond to whatever it is they do and also keep the story moving forward. For your first time, it's very simple. Your players could have gone into a town, and the town was recently attacked by goblins, and maybe they kidnapped some people or supplies, and they're going to hire you guys, adventurers, to go get their stuff back or go rescue people. So as the GM, you think of that story, you present it to the players as they enter town, and kind of, we'll give you a reward, because you kind of have to sometimes. When you first get started, your players are, you want us to do that? Sure. And sometimes different players will require different motivation. They'll want gold or treasure. So you kind of sometimes want to have these things pre-thought out in a sense of the town's going to pay you guys 10 gold pieces to go get their stuff back. And, that's the reason behind why you're going to do this. The players are going to go out. Now, as the game master, you might be, okay, so they're going to go into the woods. They're going to encounter a group of goblins that are the scouting party. They're going to fight them. Then they're going to track them back to their camp. And then they're going to attack their camp and then either free the rescue people or regather the supplies and bring them back. Very simple stuff. And as you get more experienced with it, you can take this exact same encounter, and maybe after they've cleared out the goblins, they find a letter there written by an orc chieftain that is trying to get all of the goblin tribes to work together to form a greater army. And now the characters are interested in this, and they're going to have to go investigate this because now it is a threat to the whole region as opposed to this little town. So you can see how easy it is to just completely escalate these things into a much grander adventure than a very simple little thing. But all of that comes with experience. So today we're just really kind of covering getting your feet wet. If you're playing in person, getting dice, and I can't recommend books enough. I love them, but I know that's probably a generational thing. My son is like, well, why? I have everything here in my phone, so I get it. I'm I'm just of a different generation, so some people like it, some people don't. Now, one thing I will say that is if you guys are liking this and finding this helpful, please like and subscribe. Your guys' support helps us keep all of this going, and I cannot thank you enough. So, now that we've gotten that out of the way, our shameless plug, there are numerous games that are tabletop role-playing games. There's Dungeons & Dragons, there's Pathfinder, there's Star Trek, there's Aliens, I seriously could sit here and list stuff for probably half an hour. So finding a game that's right for you is important. I love fantasy, so I gear myself towards the fantasy games. Dungeons & Dragons is probably the largest name out there. I actually play Pathfinder 2nd Edition because it's more rule intensive than Dungeons & Dragons, which doesn't actually make it more complicated. It makes it easier, in fact, because there are rules for most situations in Pathfinder, where Dungeons & Dragons, you often can find yourself, oh, my players want to do this. There's no rules for that. I have to figure that out, which it adds a new level of complexity and intimidation, honestly, for new players. Also, one of the things about Dungeons & Dragons is it can be very tricky to make what is referred to as a balanced encounter. What that means is your characters start out at first level. Well, in that first fight, what monsters can you throw at them? Can you throw a dragon at them? No, dragons are way too powerful. It's going to kill them. So, okay, well, I'll throw some goblins and some skeletons or a wolf or a giant rat, and those are level appropriate things. However, in Dungeons & Dragons, as you get in higher levels, it's more complicated to make those encounters not only fun for the players, but something I think that often gets neglected, fun for your game master. Because what often happens is either it's so hard the players are miserable, or it's so easy the game master is miserable. And you don't really want any of those things. You want that middle zone. Pathfinder is excellent at planning your encounters. There are rules that are very, very good that basically tell you. They give you a budget based on the character's level, an experience point budget, and you just look to see what monsters fit into this bracket. And you can decide if it's going to be a very easy encounter, a middle encounter, or an extremely hard encounter, or a couple stages in between. And it actually really does work for the most part. Occasionally you'll find something that, oh wow, that didn't go as I planned, because of die rolls, or characters just make some strange decisions, or they have a perfect piece of equipment for it, or they don't have the equipment for it. So it goes either way, but that's very few and far between. I would say for the most part, it is very, very accurate. In fact, as the game master, you're probably going to end up pulling monsters away from characters that go down because you easily could kill them. So you're going to go move them to characters that are still up instead of just completely killing that character, because it's a game and we all play it to have fun. Part of the fun is the potential for death of your character. Sometimes the players get into situations that it just doesn't turn out well. But these are things you want to discuss with your players beforehand. Is what style of game do they want? Do they want something that's really lighthearted and fun? Do they want something that's, hardcore and extreme? So as you're first getting out, everything's going to be probably pretty middle of the road. You're not going to know what to do when they answer the questions, and your players are certainly not going to know what to do, or your players are certainly not going to know how to answer that question. So when you're first getting started, don't worry about it, and everyone just acknowledge that we're learning this. Like everything, you're not an expert when you're learning. You're trying to get everything down, but you're also trying to have fun. It's okay to can we redo that? That went terribly. And it's okay to say yes. I know some people what? No, you've done it. It's set in stone. When you're first learning, you you don't want anyone to have a miserable experience. So you just play it by ear. See what you're happy with. See what your group's happy with. So I think, you follow a couple of these simple rules and you'll do great. I will say we run what's referred to as a West Marches game. And that is you play in line and you're always playing in the same area. And we have a bunch of different players and we have a bunch of different people that are the game masters. Yet because it's all in the same area, your experience is very similar no matter who you're playing with and who's running it. And that's kind of the purpose behind a West Marches. So you're not like, oh, I played this character and I was in this nice little human town. And the next time we play, we're in the middle of this wasteland and fighting undead. And you're like, how did I get here? What's the story behind this? So it eliminates all of that inconsistency that could arise. So it just is a much simpler experience. We run this off of the Roll for Intent Discord. I am a member of the Roll for Intent podcast. We've been running a Pathfinder 2nd Edition game for quite some time now. We're going to be approaching the 2-year mark this year. You can find us on pretty much any of your podcast listening apps and just search Roll for Intent. You'll have a great time. It's a lot of fun to listen to. But I'm going to put a link for the Discord in the bottom. But when you join the Discord, you can actually make a character and play with us. And different GMs run different what are called virtual tabletops or VTTs. And that's just the interface with how you see a map. So if you're going to have a fight, sometimes what's important in that fight is knowing what is the enemy next to you? Is the enemy 30 feet away from you? Is the enemy 100 feet away from you? That's important. If your character swings a sword, you got to be next to them. If they're 100 feet away, well, now you've got to close that distance. What happens in the meantime? How long does it take you to close that distance? What's between you and them in that distance? So that's where the maps come in handy. And a virtual tabletop is a way for everyone to look at the map. And that's really all it is. It's a map, and you move your characters on that map, and you get to see where they are and what's, the lay of the land. What are we looking at here? There are many different kinds of virtual tabletops. It's all pretty simple. Once you join up, it's very easy to get into everything. So I don't want to cover a ton of that right now. We've already gone over a lot of information for you guys. So I actually really kind of like this change in the format. So what did you think, Italo? How did it go? I do hope you guys enjoyed this. You can expect to see a lot more videos in this style. And I have some other questions that I'm going to be answering from some of my other viewers. Balzac, I haven't forgotten your question on treasure and equipment, so we're going to be getting to that very soon. And for the rest of you, you guys have a great week and game well, my friends.